Wow. Is that the best year ever?
It is. And really, it can be accounted for mostly in studying the charts this morning. It's the first half of 2022 was a very robust market. The second half has been much slower by my account,
Mhm.
showing in some cases a 50% reduction in the number of units that have gone under contract. So it's been for a lot of real estate professionals a slower market during the summer and fall. The winter's already shown some revitalization, some upticks in the market, and so we're closely watching what the markets are doing both in the U.S. and locally here.
Welcome to the Nick Fong Podcast. As the broker and owner of Ronival Real Estate, Nick has spent nearly 20 years in Baja California Sur. And in this podcast, he'll be talking everything Baja, from food and culture to real estate and property management. And now, here's your host, Nick Fong.
Welcome to Cabo News Key Update in English with Korey Riggs and Claudia Velo, brought to you by Ronival Real Estate on this November 20th edition. Claudia, what's happening?
Well, we're celebrating the anniversary of the start of the Mexican Revolution, which started in
Wow.
1910.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
So,
that's when our as a result of that revolution that lasted 11 years, the non-election mandate came into effect for Mexican government. So
okay.
that's since that time is that presidents can only have one term, which is
Mhm.
6 years. And then that's when the new version, the current version of our Constitution was implemented, and actually in 1917. So an interesting time for
Mhm.
Mexico. And today, of course, in the morning, there's always a parade. It used to be way back when I was a tiny little girl.
Mhm.
It used to be a military parade, but now it's a sporting and kind of like folkloric parade. And that's why some of the streets in downtown San Lucas and San Jose were closed for the parade. But it's a fun
Mhm.
fun event. So yeah.
Well, very cool. We're going to get into that. We'll talk about that in the second part of the show because we have our special monthly guest here.
Yes.
And we have Nick Fong from Ronival Real Estate. Nick, what's happening?
Hey, Corey, Claudia,
Hey,
how are
Nick.
you? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Well, if you want to follow us, remember, if you're listening to us on the radio, you can always go to Facebook Live at Cabo Mil News, and you can see Nick's beautiful face here. So,
Absolutely. And also remember to download the free app for Cabo Mil, which is available at your app store. Just look for Cabo Mil, or you can even ask Siri to listen to Cabo Mil, and it
wow,
will recommend the app, which is kind of cool.
very cool.
You just activated my Siri.
He's always listening.
So, Nick, welcome back to the show. We're excited to have you. What's happening? What's going on in the real estate market? And
Well, it's been quite a third quarter, and being into the fourth quarter, a lot of people are wondering where is the real estate market currently and where is it going for the next 12 months. So I thought we would talk a little bit about that. And to start us off, I'd like to listeners know that so far this year, we've closed a number of transactions in our MLS. Well over 2,500 units have already closed,
Hmm.
and that represents nearly $1.5 billion of real estate. And this is by far the best year so far in our Baja Sur MLS. That doesn't take into account the over 1,400 units that are under contract currently,
wow,
and
wow.
nearly 900 million, just under another $1 billion of contracts. And so we'll close a number of those contracts before the end of the year, probably 50 or 60% of those. So it'll be nearly $2.5 billion of real estate transacted closed in 2022. So
And
phenomenal
Nick,
year in the Baja Sur real estate market.
And Nick, I was going to ask you, does this include like private developments? Do they go on them? I don't think they. I mean, that's a whole
No.
nother.
Yeah, so the private developments, usually those developments are the ultra luxury markets of the Twin Dolphins, Chileno, El Dorado, Costa Palmas. Those do not get entered into our MLS. I would say that would probably easily represent over $1 billion of real estate just in those communities.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at $3.5 billion of real estate easy. That's going to close this year.
Wow. Is that the best year ever?
It is. And really, it can be accounted for mostly in studying the charts this morning. It's the first half of 2022 was a very robust market. The second half has been much slower by my account, showing in some cases a 50% reduction in the number of units that have gone under contract. So it's been, for a lot of real estate professionals, a slower market during the summer and fall. The winter's already shown some revitalization, some upticks in the market. And so we're closely watching what the markets are doing, both in the US and locally here.
And Nick, have you noticed a change in the trend of what buyers are looking for, or is it still the same product that has been successful for the last 2 years? I think it's been an ongoing trend.
So the trend, yeah, Claudia, the trend was in the last couple of years condominiums, both from a developer point of view and also the consumer. So that need was met very well with the new construction, but there's been a transition in buyer mentality in the last couple of months, especially with the US real estate market slowing down, interest rates on the rise. Although in recent weeks, the interest rates have dipped below 7% once again in the US real estate market. So that's a huge plus. And that directly affects us here in Baja Sur. But generally speaking, the buyers have been more timid and cautious. They're not quite sure what's going to happen medium term in the US real estate market, and hence they're waiting to make a commitment to purchase in Baja Sur.
Do you see the trend that became a trend? I would say like the second quarter of this year, especially people from California selling their homes in California and moving across the border looking for a similar or better lifestyle, but at a more efficient cost. Do you see that reaching Cabo? And is that something that's ongoing? Because obviously that migration away from California became a thing. A lot of people moving to Arizona, Tennessee, other states. How does that affect the market here in Los Cabos?
It is more and more demographic of our buyer than ever before. So not just California, but other states, are Canada even. Had a gentleman walk into my office many years in the mortgage business wanting to sell real estate because of discontent with the local government, just society and general living day to day. And I just did a podcast recently of a couple out of Mesa, Arizona, that were owners of a house in the Pedregal, Cabo San Lucas, and sold out and bought in Loreto, of all places. And they are not just getting a second home, they're permanently relocating to the area. And it's not just retirement, but we just had a couple that is out of California relocate to the area, still working professionals in real estate and looking to, bought a house, moved the family, 2 kids, and are integrating themselves in the local community. And that certainly is not a second home, that's a permanent relocation. So it is very much the trend. And it's something I've never seen before in the nearly 18 years selling real estate here.
Yeah, I have encountered several families that are young professionals that, thanks to technology, can now continue to work in their
Mhm.
field, but are moving permanently. And I think that's a very interesting thing for our community, because it's definitely going to reshape the way things are done, and in terms of schooling and the products that are consumed. Do you find a lot of these conversations? Are you having a lot of these conversations with your clients of late?
Yes. So we're talking the the living costs. What's the cost of living? Things that are conversations that people were, as a second home, they're less concerned with because they're coming just a couple months, 3 months, a year. But they're analyzing what's the average bag of goods when you go to a grocery store. What is the cost of gas?
Mm.
What does it take to purchase a vehicle? uh, Getting work permits, tax ID numbers, getting your bank account set up. When I was for selling real estate here, the majority of our clients didn't have local bank accounts.
Mm.
Now it's almost a prerequisite to have a local bank account if you own property here.
Mm-hmm.
So
It,
a lot has changed.
and it's interesting because I know through Banca Mifel, because we've had them on, that you can actually get a local bank account without having your permanent resident card or
Mm-hmm.
temporary. And so that's amazing. I don't know if other banks do that too, but I do know that that's a possibility now. So it's a great thing. Like, how about construction? Like, how are construction prices coming? Is it still very high right now? Is what's happening with that? Because I know some people have bought lots and they're waiting
Mhm.
to maybe build, or what's happening with construction prices.
Well, it's interesting because the construction costs in the last couple of years have risen tremendously, and there have been some dips in some construction material costs. That is really a month to month type thing, but
Mm.
the developers are hedging their investment tremendously by pre-ordering and pre-purchasing a lot of materials. But a lot of the newer developers are still suffering because of the lack of experience of, and also capital resources. They don't have the flexibility to advance purchase um, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of construction materials so that they aren't subjected to inflation, supply chain issues. But the not just the raw materials, but we've been seeing in the last year or a little bit more and continue to, that elevators are hard to receive
Mm.
online.
Mm.
So with the huge amount of vertical construction, the condominium projects, they have to have elevators. And so we're delaying delivery on units throughout the Baja Sur because of the lack of elevators. And so that's really interesting. You can have the
Mm.
full
Mm.
structure up, the units completely finished, but no elevators. And they've been ordered for many months in a lot of these projects.
So
So
if you want to lose weight, you want to go to that project and buy
Go
it
to that
and buy the
project.
penthouse. Buy the penthouse.
yeah, and it's interesting because I ran a stat, and the new construction in our MLS is accounts for a third of our inventory, and that's only a third of our listed inventory. If we were to take into account the developments that aren't listing their full inventory, maybe they list 5 to 10 of their 50 units at a time,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's well over 50% of our available inventory in our market is new construction or in construction properties. Hey, thanks for being a part of the Nick Fong podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get the latest updates. And if you're watching this on our social channels, please like and share. And if you want to be featured or you want me to talk on a certain topic, food, activities, culture, real estate in the Baja, drop a comment.
It really makes us realize that even though we are connected, we have the behavior in our economy of an island, and sometimes things just don't get here on time. And I think that must be something that is of consideration, especially for developers that are not locally based, that are coming from the mainland or elsewhere. And you have to, as you were saying, you have to understand how things work here, and who's the right person to get you the stuff to where you want it.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's the last 2 years we've been very fortunate with a lot of real estate activity, and so it has attracted a lot of those out of town developers that you mentioned, Claudia. And so they've been I've heard from many of them the growing pains of doing business here in Baja Sur. Another trend that's interesting that I've noticed is with the connecting what we were mentioning earlier, more and more people permanently relocating here. It's a need of not as many condominiums, but more what I like to call the horizontal community, which is the single family home or duplexes and or townhouses.
Yeah.
And the need of that is because you're in there full time and you don't necessarily want to live with people to your left, right, above, and below. And so you want a little bit more space, a little bit less density, maybe your own private yard, garden area. And so we just released one of those projects called Rivieri, located in the south. The developer, Gianmarco Vela, very well recognized member of the community, entrepreneur, and real estate developer. It is his latest project, and it's a fantastic price point where very few projects offer inventory under $200,000. And
wow.
his duplexes start at that, and single family homes in the low 300s.
Oh, wow. That's great.
That makes me want to look at it. That's so
cool. Let's go buy some.
Let's go do it.
Let's be neighbors.
Well, it's a good investment. And I do believe that with the, real estate is an economics game, supply and demand. And with the large supply of condominiums, new construction and existing, the demand of single family duplexes, townhouses is growing. But there's even less supply of that than condominiums. So if you can land the right project with the right property type in the right location, you're going to make money even in the slower real estate market. And so that's something I'd like to instill with your listeners and viewers, is that even in a slower real estate market like we've been experiencing the last few months, there are still opportunities, both new construction and in resales. And so it's very important to be working with a licensed real estate agent, because they're doing this day in and day out. They have their finger on the pulse, and they're going to be able to get you the best deals out there.
Hey, so, and you mentioned something, I think it's so important. You were talking about some of these developers that they're not planning ahead or they don't have the experience. And I think that's also why you should have someone like you or your team involved, so you can vet these developers, because you don't want someone buying a pre-construction and then they get in trouble that they're not financed enough. And you really work with people that are going to complete what they say they're going to complete.
Yeah, it's not just the experience of the developer, but also asking a lot of questions of how they're being financed. So are they using all pre-construction deposits to do the construction? Are they coming in with their own capital? Do they have investors backing them? Do they have bank financing? All of these things are questions that you could be asking if you're a buyer out there in this market, or if you're a real estate agent representing buyers.
And my question was kind of like following that, is by working with a licensed real estate agent and broker like Ronival, you also get help through the closing process, because it's very different from closing a home in the States or Canada. And this is something where your expertise makes such a huge difference in the peace of mind and the certainty of things being done the right way. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's sometimes the easiest part is selling the property. Closing the property is where all the fun begins, and you start uncovering skeletons in the closet. You start seeing title issues with the seller. The seller, someone on title passed away, and you need to get their will, and you need to get it translated, apostilled. There's all sorts of things that enter into a closing in the Baja Sur that I wasn't accustomed to in closings in Chicago, where I first got started in my real estate career. And so a real estate company or real estate professional that you're working with that has been through that process dozens, if not hundreds, if thousands of times, they're going to be, that experience is going to come in handy tremendously. And most agents don't have that amount of experience, but the company they work for very well can. And so Ronival Real Estate prides itself on having all the process from the beginning till the end, to the day that you get your keys to your property, get the title in hand. We follow you through that whole process. So we have a closing department. We work with the best closing attorneys, the notaries, escrow companies. And last year we did over 700 deals, and over this year we'll equal that number. And so we do a lot of transactions, a lot of experience behind what we do. But there are other companies and real estate agents out there that provide also great experience. Those are kind of things, the questions that you want to ask, right? If you're a buyer, how many deals have you done? Tell me about the closing process. What's the step-by-step process? What are the problems I'm going to encounter potentially? How can I safeguard myself as a buyer, as a seller? And if they do come up, what is your issue resolution plan, right? Who do you have on staff to walk us through that, to help us through that?
Exactly. And also talking about that, because I recently, through friends of mine who were going through a deal, it is important. There are agents that have been in the market for a long time, but have always been part of a company and have worked with the backing of a company. And then they go independent, and it's not the same. Even if it's somebody that knows the market, they're used to having the backing of a company with all the processes of due diligence and closing, etc. And so it is important to be backed by a respectable agency that actually has the infrastructure. And I think that that's one of the things that sets Ronival apart. And I know you're modest and you're very fair, and you like to talk about the whole industry, but I think it's important to also mention that.
Yeah, and to relate it to another industry, right? We all know Amazon. We do business with Amazon, and you would think, Amazon's retail. Well, yeah, it's retail. You buy things from it, but it's also delivery. It's logistics. It's customer service. And it's easy to pick up your phone and purchase something, but are you going to get it? Right. And so in real estate, that's the closing process. You can buy it, but are you going to actually get the property? Are you going to actually be able to use it? Right.
Do you end up with what you bought?
Yeah. So we make sure you get delivered that. And it's really important for the real estate agent that you work with, that they can deliver what you're buying.
Well, Nick, we've kept you over. We're going to keep you over. We're doing a longer segment now instead of our first segment because you're such an interesting guest. And before we let you go, though, I want to talk about, we were talking about before we got it. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about real estate.
No, that's good. That's good. Real estate, on the real estate front, we're good.
We were talking about your cold plunges, and you were saying that you were a little bit cold for a couple hours after you cold plunges. Have you been doing cold plunges daily now?
I do it every other day at least. Okay. And so are you doing it every day?
I've taken a little bit of time off, but I do it at least twice a week now, but I do have moments where I do it every day. Yeah. So, but you have an ice maker now, right? So you're doing.
Yeah, I have an ice maker, and it's really convenient. But I was doing it daily, and it was a time commitment because, moving the ice into the ice barrel, and to be frank, it's cold. And so mentally getting prepared, because for me, it's hours afterwards, I'm cold. And so I'm literally, I have a jacket that I have right here because I did the plunge this morning.
Well, it's good. It's good to be cold. It's good to push our bodies to a stress because it actually helps us. A lot of us, one of the things we get in trouble with is we're so used to being comforted that our body never has to respond to stress. And so the cold plunge can actually put us in a little bit of stress, which actually makes you more resilient. And now that you know about the horse stance and pushing your arms out for 2 minutes after you get out of the cold plunge. Yeah, exactly. Nice job. Exactly. Then
show
you're
those
gonna
biceps again, Nick.
Yeah, come on. Come on, Nick. You gotta see this on
very
Facebook Live.
powerful there for a moment.
Yeah, it's very
Yes.
cool.
I'm going to start practicing. So on the next, in December, I'll report you the horse stance.
Yeah.
Did you finish the Wim Hof?
I go in January to Spain to finish it. So so it's going to be really cool. But I want to show you something here. This is something I've run into, and it's probably something I'm going to purchase. But this is a cold plunge that you can actually pick up and carry, and it's got its own machine to keep the water cold. Yeah, and it's like $3,000, $3,500, and so. This is on Instagram, Cold Plunge Tub, at Cold Plunge Tub, so you can follow it. But I wanted to show it because when we talked about optimize, this is probably the unit that I'm looking at having there because it looks great, and just the research I've done it. But I mean, and then you don't have to worry about ice. So
I love that.
I know it's amazing. Follow him on Instagram because you can see.
I just did. I just did.
Good. And we can talk about it because I'm gonna definitely get that. I'm that's probably gonna be my Christmas present to myself.
The guy looks like he's having so much fun.
But it's actually a video that I had to spend. It was his first cold plunge, and he didn't look like he was having fun the whole time. So he looks like he's hurting. But anyway,
I love that.
I love it.
It's amazing because if you look at people are carrying it. It's not heavy. It's got its own refrigeration unit. It looks like a great option. So I'm gonna research it and maybe buy it. So
you can even travel with your own cold plunge tub.
Totally. I mean, it's cold plenty is the best. I mean, it gets rid of inflammation. There's so many things. I know, Nick, we're gonna do your podcast and talk about some biohacking stuff. So there's some other things we can talk about. But this has been great.
Baby Yoda mug. Tumbler.
Yes, it is.
Wow, I love it.
I mean, you keep getting cooler.
Wait, it's not baby. It's not baby.
He likes Baby Yoda.
So what's the name? What's the name? It's not really Baby Yoda.
Grogu.
It's Grogu.
He's Baby Yoda.
He's got his own name, Claudia. Come on.
I love him. He's cute.
Grogu. Well, we are finally to the end of our show, unfortunately. Into the segment. So everybody stay here. Nick, thank you so much. We're looking forward to having you next month as well. And we'll keep in touch and hopefully see you on your podcast soon. We'll arrange that. Yes. But everybody stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nick Fong Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Ronival Real Estate and follow Nick on Instagram at NickFong_Ronival. Ready to find your Baja dream home? Check out the latest property listings at Ronival.com or findmexicohouses.com. Hasta luego.